Hello and welcome back to One-on-One Shadowboxing. We'll continue our discussion with David Lowe, who is the FamilyVoice Australia's West Australian State Officer. David, we discussed the marriage and the importance of marriage. Can you tell me about something, what the FamilyVoice of Australia is and how promoting Christianity and the Christian values?
A lot of our work is actually done in the churches, just raising awareness of the issues. The various bills come into Parliament from time to time that of direct concern to family, faith and freedom. So those are the three areas we mainly deal with. And so we spend a lot of time in Christian churches in particular, making people aware of that. Sometimes we meet with MPs and we take local people along and have that friendly chat to share our concerns.
So you guys working like a lobby group as well?
Yeah, but I prefer not to call it a lobby group because lobby often implies a bit of power, whereas we would prefer to say we're a ministry, we represent families, or we stand up for what's good for families. So we're actually saying, well, everyone comes from a family, and what are the best things for families? And so you know, we recognise there's many different points of view on that as well. But when we're talking about, well, what's the best for our nation and what's the best for families?
So what is the best for families in Australia?
Well,
like the voice of the families Australia.
Yeah, well, like we talked about before, one of the big issues there is the whole pornography issue that's having a big impact on families. So we've made recommendations to say, look, we'd really love to have clean feed, mandatory ISP filtering on the internet.
Now, but you know that, David, as everyone knows, technically it's impossible. The filtering is not working, except not even the government can filter, not even the CIA can filter
Not
everything.
necessarily. We know that the UK has just proposed to have mandatory ISP filtering, so there's obviously a sense of optimism there. And we're just saying, well, why can't we?
We can say that a sense of sort of technical stupidity is there because it's impossible. It's proven. I mean, the web and the World Web, it's just impossible to censor or
pretty much
filter.
Impossible on a local home level or business level.
Yes.
But a lot of businesses are concerned that their employees are spending a lot of time looking at pornography or high-impact violence and whatnot. Same in the home. It's very, very difficult, almost impossible, I'd say, to stop it at a local level. But something can be done at the service provider level.
But that's called censorship, if I'm right? So where is the freedom of expression and where is the freedom of speech?
Well, like with anything, you do need that balance.
And how could you balance it if you got a compulsory filter?
Well, what the UK have done and what we agree with is that the balance can be that people can opt in. Okay, I don't want any censorship. They can have, you know, whatever content they like. But I believe a lot of families in Australia would say, no, as a default, we don't want pornography, we don't want high-impact violence. So as a default, they would like to have from their ISP none of that rubbish. So
it's not a compulsory censorship, it's a censorship of the people who want to keep their home clear.
Yeah,
or their workplace or whatever.
Yes, and I think we get that good balance there, and we need it.
But you see, I mean, technically speaking, that's really, whatever you switch off this minute, it's switched back in the next minute. So it's not that easy. So it's not that idyllic as you think, but well, behind the intention is maybe very well thought, but I don't think it's working. But that's not my judgment, not other people's judgment. So this is about Christian value with censorship to protect, because this is, whichever way you try to present it, it's a censorship.
Well, you can present it as a freedom too. I want the freedom to be able to say, I don't want that sewage in my house. So
but you see,
it can be
the freedom, David,
ways,
without arguing with you or disagreeing, freedom is that if I want or don't want to have that pornography. So if we are adults and we can make a decision on that, we should be free to make the decision. And seems to me, somehow, these people you're talking about who need protection don't want to make the decision somehow.
Well, we know the UK has made that decision, but
UK made the decision. We will see if it's working or not.
yeah, true. But we can also make efforts ourselves, and the ISPs they've got far more technical expertise than me and the average mum and dad. I'm sure that they can make it work to some good degree.
Protecting life. One issue was the abortion, which we partly dealt with in the first half of this program.
Perhaps we can continue a little bit more with abortion.
Abortion, yes.
Mainly because in the last month we had a media release on another health harm to mothers who have aborted children. And we know that we got mocked to some degree in the mainstream media on this. But again, for us it was a freedom of speech issue, as well as let's look at the science around this. If someone's pro-choice,
what does science say?
Well, if someone's pro-choice, they need to have all the facts. And it was yet another study that came out where it was shown that women who had aborted children had a much higher rate of breast cancer. And we believe Australian women need to know about that. And this is not the only study. Now, admittedly on ABC radio, it did get put down as, oh, this is not a peer-reviewed survey, but a study. But the scientific method was very good. And we did actually cite, in the study, it actually cited about 70 other journals that were peer-reviewed. So we know there's a lot of information there. But this one particular study done in Dakar, they had studied 262 women who had breast cancer. They had a control group of another 262 who didn't have breast cancer. And they looked at the rates of... They just tried to find what was the highest risk factor for getting breast cancer. And they found that in those that had breast cancer, 90% of the women who had breast cancer had had an abortion. And it was less than 30% of the control group who had an abortion. So there seemed to be, well, there was a very strong correlation there. And it wasn't something new. This has sort of been something seen before. But
so that's the risk of abortion, put it this way. And you can say this is the punishment from God, if you like. But the thing is, still women takes abortion. And more countries open up for abortion. Even Ireland is now opening up for abortion.
But they need to be aware of the risk. And that's
no,
what we're
say now that they know the risk. Abortion probably is risky for breast cancer. But probably so many other things are risky for the same breast cancer, which people are not really talking about.
I don't know if people know
lots of things.
Yeah, I don't know if people really understand the risk. And it's almost a surprise where women, after an abortion, they then suffer mental illness or feel depressed or sometimes suicidal. But then there's
so we know that, David, we know that, and no one is challenging that probably. Abortion is not a happy event. Regardless of how does it came about, okay, and abortion is not compulsory. We know these two things. So again, if you're talking about freedom and the FamilyVoice Australia really think freedom is something which we should defend, then we should acknowledge the freedom for doing it for someone or not doing it. So we're free to make a choice with education, with knowledge, with more knowledge. Then we can see if we leave the woman to make a decision, that's good. And as you brought up in the first half of this program, if it's got the support of the family, maybe abortion never happens, or very rarely happens. So my question is, why not family support those girls, ladies, whoever, who need the abortion or decided?
It'd be wonderful if more families supported.
But that's education from you guys, who are the FamilyVoice of Australia.
And this comes back to a lot of our work is within the society and the churches, and hopefully we set a good example in that. But at the same time, we know that there are issues there and risks there that people are not so aware of. And certainly the adoption option is rarely pushed, or if it is, it's not pushed very hard. That there are other people in Australia who would love to adopt a child, but instead of being fairly presented that option and some of these bigger health risks, and obviously there's a serious health risk to the child, which grieves us, but to the mother as well. And yet the pressure is put so much on the mother, and she's often left very unsupported. in this. So I agree with you. There should be more family support. There should be more respect for the marriage and the situation about how.
And also respect for freedom, because the decisions
Yes.
can be made and made.
Yes, and respect for the child.
Education and the kids in family.
Yes, education is the big concern for us as well. I mean, obviously, we really want to bring our families up with a good knowledge of the world and good values, but at the same time, we do hear a cry that, look, my little Johnny or little Susie's going to school, but they're not being taught ethics or values. And how can you do that when you withdraw from perhaps a biblical worldview or even any religious worldview? How can you have ethics? So I've heard cases where a child will come home and they've been presented with a moral dilemma, and the teacher who's teaching the ethics or moral class or whatever has basically left it up to the children. Well, you decide. And I think we need to do better than that. Rather than say, you decide, present them with the information, but certainly say, well, this is a good direction and this is better in some ways. But when a child comes home, the family and the parents will often say, look, my child has got no moral compass, and that's a desire there. So
how do you see, or how the Family Voice of Australia see the percentage in the task? How much the school have to do and how much is the family doing?
Yeah,
because seems to me, the basic of all morals, not coming from government, which sometimes not have any moral, but it's coming from families. If it's not come from the family, it's a sort of false expectation to have it from the school. How do you guys see this?
No, I know where you're coming from. There's a lot of pressure on teachers and schools, and really it needs to be back in the families as well. But with the amount of brokenness and often abuse and domestic violence, it is becoming increasingly difficult. So the pressure then gets shifted back on the schools, and they're expected to do more and more of the discipline that used to be largely done in the home. And so I feel for a lot of principals and teachers on that one. But when we largely take some of the Christian values out of schools, we see this with the national curriculum, where the new history syllabus has really sidelined the Judeo-Christian history of Australia. So even on that level, then what are children learning about how we function at best as a society, and where we have these great blessings and benefits from? So I know even John Howard called it an imbalance and even a bizarre situation when he looked at this new curriculum that's been put out to schools. So some definite concerns there, but really too much pressure on schools as well.
So what do you think, the balance? How could we set up a healthy balance in family values to give to the children?
Yeah, well, that's where we see our ministry as being two-way. It's not sort of just some sort of lobby group that's saying government do more, but it's really working with churches and communities to support programs where there are parenting programs, or there are programs that really help empower the parents. And you know, all sorts of topics surrounding that come up about, do we smack children, don't we smack children? And I don't intend to go into that big debate now, but there's a whole issue of discipline at home and the role modelling that parents are doing that seems to be lacking in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's there, and we need to look more at those figures who are doing a great job.
Thank you, David. I have to say, you and your organization really doing something which is called shadowboxing. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, one-on-one shadowboxing.